In this video, we will look at building and executing a mapping between Jama and Cameo System Modeler. On the left, we see the SysML model in Cameo. Engine requirement has two sub-requirements: engine power requirement, linked by a derive requirement dependency to liftoff requirement, and engine size requirement by a verified by dependency to the engine size test block. We want this to map to Jama with a specific mapping: SysML requirement to Jama requirement, SysML block to Jama test case, SysML relations to Jama relations, and so on, resulting in the Jama hierarchy shown on the right. We want this mapping to transform the entire example in one pass and to work bidirectionally. We build this mapping in two stages. First, we make sure that Syndeia recognizes the artifact and relationship types in both Jama and Cameo that we will need for the mapping. This can include both standard and custom types. Secondly, we will then build the mapping. We do this in the Mapping tab of the Syndeia dashboard. Under Model Types, we have some artifact and relation types already registered for Jama, but we need two more: a Jama test case artifact and a verified by relation. We add artifact types by first selecting a Jama repository to which Syndeia has a link, because artifact types are repository specific. Then we select from a list of Jama item types. We can edit our name and description for this artifact type and get a list of that type's attributes. We then select which of those attributes we want to be available for mapping later. Adding Jama relation types is even simpler. We add the type, after checking that it is available in our repository, and add name and description. Now we have all the artifact and relation types we need for Jama. We need to do the same for Cameo SysML, but here we have already added everything we need: block and requirement artifact types, derived requirement, and verified by relations. To build the new mapping, we scroll down to the mapping group and add a new mapping for SysML Jama. In the new mapping window, we map a source or SysML requirement to a target or Jama requirement and add a name and description. We select Children Recursive because we want multiple levels of transformation, and we include attributes. Ordinarily, SysML requirements only have a few attributes: name, ID, and text, but we can add stereotypes with additional attributes. Back in the Cameo model, we included a profile with some useful stereotypes we created. Jama requirement contains priority and status tag values. We add it to the mapping. One consequence is that when we execute a model transform with this mapping, the new stereotype will be added to all the Cameo requirements affected by the transform. A second consequence is that these attributes are now available for mapping. We add Cameo-Jama attribute pairs row by row. Under Source, the pull-down menu shows all the SysML requirement attributes available, including the two from the new stereotype. And under Target, we see all the Jama requirement attributes. We match them up as desired. Relations mapping works similarly. We add Cameo-Jama pairs line by line. The available options are those we set up earlier under Model Groups: derived maps to derived, and verified to verified. Now we have a holdup. Going back to the example, we see that Jama requirement maps to requirement, But if we map verified by, we must also identify a mapping for the element generated at the end of that relation. In this case, SysML block to Jama test case. This is called a related mapping. We'll save the current status of the main mapping and create a new block test case mapping. For this example, we won't bother with attributes or relations for this mapping, but they could be included as well. We reopen the original requirement mapping with relations and add this related mapping at the bottom and save. Now the mapping knows how to handle a block or test case if it comes up at the end of a mapped relation type. Finally, we are ready to execute a model transform. In the Connection Manager tab, we show an empty package in our Cameo model on the left, our Jama repository on the right, expanded to show the requirements hierarchy, and select Model Transform in the center. I drag the top-level engine requirement into the empty package. There are several available mapping options for a Jama requirement. I choose the one we just created. The same mapping would work just as well if I dragged a SysML model to Jama. In the Connection Search tab, we can see 5 connections, one for each of the 5 artifacts. If we modify one side, deleting the derived requirement relation from engine power requirement, for example, then run a comparison across the connection for that element, or for the entire set of connections, the missing relation stands out in the difference table. Syndeia also gives us the capability to update the SysML model from Jama, or Jama from SysML, assuming that my Jama account has write privileges.